Hi, Chuck Huber here for the Stata YouTube channel. Today I'd like to show you how to store graphs temporarily in memory, save graphs to a file on disk, and export your files, your graphs, to various file types. Okay? So let's begin by going, I'm going to be using the NHANES2L dataset, and you can open that by typing webuse NHANES2L. So I'm going to go up here to Graphics, and I'm going to select Histogram. So let's say that I'd like to create a histogram for the variable age. So I'm going to come down here and select age as my variable. So I could just click Submit, and that will create my histogram. Let's make it a little bit smaller here. Okay, so that will create the graph. So let's say I'd like to store that graph temporarily in memory. Okay, I can come over here to, oops, click the wrong tab, to Overall, and I can give my graph a name. So I could name this my graph. Or let's just call it histogram. Histogram. Okay. And if I've already created this, I may need to check replace just so it'll overwrite the previous version. So if I click submit, now it created the histogram again. It happened so quickly you could hardly see it. And now that graph is stored temporarily in memory, and I can go back and use it for other things such as graph combine. Okay, and we can see that here in the output in the results window. So I want to do the rest of this in the do file. So I can show you how this works, some other commands you can do with this. So let's say that I ran this. I'm going to rerun this because I named it my histogram here. So I'm going to rerun my histogram using the histogram command. I've named it my histogram. And let's say that I close it, but I want to see it again later. I can type graph display and type the same name, my histogram, and it will come back up. So you don't have to create it again. You just type graph display and it comes back up, because it's temporarily stored in memory. If it's open and I want to close it, let's say I'm in a do file and my do file creates lots of graphs, I can close those by typing graph close and give it a name. So from the do file editor, I could close that graph. I don't have to click that X. If I want to see the graphs in memory, I can type graph dir memory, and that will show me a directory of any graphs that are open. So I have graph, histogram, and my histogram are both floating around in memory right now. If I want to close them all, I can type graph close _ all, and that will close all of those graphs. And if I want to drop them from memory, I can type graph drop all, and now they'll be removed from memory. Okay, so that's how you can store and do some things with graphs in memory. Now what if I want to save them to a disk? Let's go to another do file here. So what I could do is I could create my histogram, so histogram age, and while that window is open, I can type graph save my histogram, and since I've done this before, I'm going to use the replace option. And then I'm going to close this so you can see it says graph save my histogram replace, and it says it's not found. I haven't created it before, so it saved it. Now let's say that I come back later on and I want to use that graph again. I don't have to recreate it. I can just type graph use, and it will use that graph from the disk. Okay. And then what if I want to see the graphs that I have stored on disk? I can close this and type again graph dir, but I'm going to use the GPH option, so it will show me any graphs that I have stored on the disk in the working directory. Okay. So graph dir GPH shows that I have the graph myhistogram.gph stored on the disk. So if I want to close it, I can type graph close my histogram. Let's open it again so we can see how that works. Whoops, that's graph dir. So if I had my graph open, I can type graph close, give it the name. And I'm not sure why it's not closing it. Oh, because it's not looking for it's looking for one in memory. Anyway, and then if I want to erase that from the file, erase that file, I can type erase, give it the file name, and now it's gone. Okay? So that's how I could save my graphs in Stata's proprietary graphics format to a disk. And I strongly recommend that you save your graphs in GPH format, because you can always open them later and modify them and then export them again if you need to. So speaking of exporting, let's go to exporting graphs. So let's say that I have my histogram for age here. I might want to export that to a PNG file or a PostScript file or an SVG, scalable vector graph, or many other kinds of things, PDF files. So what I'm going to do then, I'm just going to show two quick examples of this. One is graph export myhistogram.png as a PNG. So this is going to save this as a .png file. And I've used the width and the height options here to specify the dimensions of the graph in pixels. So this would correspond to high def or 1080p definition in terms of its pixel dimensions. Okay, so if I run that, it will export that to a PNG file, and you can see that right here. Now I could also export this if I wanted to a PostScript file. So that's this last command here, graph export myhistogram.ps, and I've used some different options for this. So orientation is landscape, so it's going to be in landscape orientation. Logo off turns off or suppresses the Stata logo. And then T margin is the top margin, so I'm going to have a 1/2 inch top margin, and L margin is the left margin, so I'll have a 1/2 inch margin on the left of the document as well. Okay, so those are some of the things you can do with storing and saving and exporting graphs. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for stopping by.